Hello friends, my name is Luciano and I make videos on the internet. I very specifically and very passionately like to make videos about jump chains. In my latest video on my channel, at least the one before this one, I did a new and revamped video about starting a jump chain. And in that video, I talked about the Pokemon Trainer Choose Your Own Adventure, which is a Gen 5 jump, or at least a jump that is accurate up to Gen 5 by Quicksilver, the original creator of the jump chain formats. It was and often is a jumper's first jump if a jumper wants to be as traditional as possible, although they don't have to follow that rule. But we are going to take a beat to look through this. We're not going to look through it in depth. And then at the end of it, we are going to take a look at what happens after a jumper's first jump. If you need help with any of this terminology, a jump chain is both the name of the subtype of Choose Your Own Adventure that this is known as broadly, and also refers to the sum totality of a jumper's journey across the multi or omniverse. A jump refers to a specific stint in a setting. It is usually a decade long, although it doesn't have to be, and a jumper is the protagonist of this specific Choose Your Own Adventure. So we are now going to go ahead and very quickly skim through this. As usual, I am going to have a link in the video description to this document, so that way anyone who wants to look at it in detail certainly can. This isn't meant to be a comprehensive look at this particular jump. It's just meant to allow people to see the actual jump documents. Most jump documents are not this imaged, although there are several that are. There are many very stylistic jump makers that exist who really like to decorate and make their jump documents look absolutely amazing. That is not a skill that I have. All of my jump documents are very plain, and you can tell this if you go and take a look at my drive, which is probably going to be in the video description of this as well. So once you have finished your decade-long stay in the world of Pokemon, what happens next? Well, assuming you did not die, you are going to be presented with two, probably three options. The two that you are going to be presented with by default, no matter what, are going to be Homeward Bound and Not Going Back. Both of these end your chain. Homeward Bound allows you to return allows you to return to your homeworld. I laughed because I read the bottom of the description. If you feel like taking over your world with that stuff, go nuts. And then Not Going Back allows you to live out the rest of your life in the Pokemon world. The next adventure, which you will probably see, assuming your story is a jump chain story that revolves around going to multiple settings, is the option that allows you to move on. The reason I say that you may not see this is that technically, if your benefactor did not find the life that you live sufficiently entertaining and to your fancy, they may not offer you this option, but by default, you should assume that this is an option that your jumper is going to see. This is the option that allows you to continue your chain. And by continue your chain, I mean that this allows you to go to the next setting that your jumper is going to visit. And this is where things get a lot more free. At this point, your jumper also gets two additional things that I've talked about in past videos. Your jumper gets access to the warehouse and to the body mod, at least assuming you are opting to keep things as traditional as possible. You don't have to do that. My jumpers do not often get or use warehouses. I find them challenging to use effectively in my own head, in my stories. And for my body mod, my jumpers tend to have the essential body mod rather than the Quicksilver one. However, all of this is up to you, but for the sake of this video, what I am going to talk about is not warehouse and body mods. I want to focus on the next jump and doing all of that stuff. For those of you who don't know, I actually have a chain that I did on YouTube. I have plans to do a new chain, but life is very funny and chaotic thing, and I don't always get the opportunity to sit down and film videos for that. So that's the reason I haven't started a new chain for my channel. But at this point, you have effectively unlimited freedom. While there are jumps that could technically be your next jump in some sequential order, you could try a gauntlet next if you wanted to, or you could go to the generic virgin jump, which I believe is a not safe for work jump that is intended to be either your second or your third jump. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. I know it's supposed to be a very early jump, but this is YouTube, so we're not going to go into detail about not safe for work things. And also, I am not super interested in gauntlets, even though I know plenty of people who are. I know plenty of people who really love gauntlets. That's just not a thing that's ever interested in me. So, what you do next is largely up to you. There are thousands of jump documents, and I am not exaggerating. There is a list that chronicles jump documents, and it has over 2,000 individual jumps. And last I checked, I don't remember being on that list, and I've created over 60 jumps. So the actual number of jump documents that exist is probably in I can't imagine that it is some absolutely ludicrous number in like the tens of thousands, but it is absolutely in the thousands. So there is an incredibly vast amount of freedom that you could use from here. So, for example, if you wanted to go to a super spooky setting, you could go to generic creepypasta, which is a very good baby's first monster jump. That is fantastic. If you really like the idea of having all sorts of wild forms that you can shapeshift into, or if you really like the idea of having stuff that allows you to use fear in different ways, or allows you to be a hero and detective and investigator, there's a lot of different origins in that one, which a lot of people could use. There's Chronicle, which is my favorite first jump, even though it's not designed as a first jump. It's just a very fun jump where you can get telekinesis for free, and you could get a bunch of really powerful perks, although if you really want to master it, you can't go there and expect to have a super easy, super fun time as a first jump. There is generic action RPG, which gives you a bunch of powers and abilities derived from RPGs. There's Hunger Games, which I find to be a fun early jump that if you really want to have the funnest experience, you probably shouldn't come into as some sort of overpowered peak human warrior who can destroy buildings with your eyes or anything goofy like that. But once you have selected a jump, and we'll select a jump for the sake of this video, you go to that jump and you design a build there, and you go through what I mentioned in my past jump, which is the phases of a jump document. For the sake of this video, we are going to take a look at Burkus's Mario Maker jump, which is a supermarket style jump. We're about to transition over to that document right now, and as usual, that link will be in the video description. Welcome to the Super Mario Maker series by Burkus. This is a supermarket style jump, which means that it is not origined, which means that designing your build and a lot of other stuff is much simpler for this. We're not going to design a build for this jump, we're just going to skim through it so that way you can see what would come next. You can select your starting location or you can roll for it. There's no backgrounds here. Your age and sex and or gender allow you to pick whatever you want. With jumps like this, the lion's share of content is going to be perks and items. I remember that this one has more items than some of these types of jumps do. This one also has many more perks than most of these jumps usually do. And the reason for that is that this is not just a Mario Maker jump document, but this is a Mario series jump jump documents that includes stuff from the Super Smash Brothers and a bunch of other things that you can already start to see even as we move through this jump documents. That is because there is actually a different Super Mario Maker jump that was created by Triseveron, whose name I promise I just mispronounced. But these two jumps were designed in conjunction and have very different makeups, so you can look at that one if you want to see a little bit more of something that is focused on the maker side of things. This is focused more on the Super Mario and Friends side of things, and this is still very fun. Supermarket style jumps are great early power grabber type jumps that allow you to grab a bunch of different fun things and allow you to get perks that are useful across the board without thinking super focusedly on the sort of jumper that you're trying to create. We are now over at the items, so that way you can go ahead and take a look at that. There's some items here. There's not a tremendous number of items, and then after that we are going to be able to see things like the companion option and the drawback options, as well as supplement mode. Supplement mode is a very interesting thing. What's funny is I have supplements and crossovers in a bunch of my jumps, and I tend to use the terms interchangeably, even though I probably shouldn't. For me, supplements are you take two different jumps and you fuse them together, keeping the point totals separate, and designing the specifics of the world per the rules of the two jumps that you're fusing together as much as you want, so you can effectively have all of the powers from one setting without having any of the stuff from one setting in a jump where you are in Wario's world, but with some sort of absolutely ludicrous power set like the Harry Potter power set or something like that. When I write supplements, I really mean crossovers. There isn't that much of a wild difference, although crossovers are better for fusing the worlds together in ways that include elements of both, rather than just using a jump as a shortcut to grab powers and items. Although if you do use a jump as a supplement and you take drawbacks, you're still supposed to have those drawbacks be relevant in some way. So here are the companion options. It's worth noting that in supermarket style jumps, typically anyone that you want to recruit in this world is free to join you as a companion, and this is a sort of meta perk that you can use to simplify the process of getting companions. And oftentimes in jump chains, when people have rules where you need to pay for companions, what you're actually paying for is a good first impression, rather than paying to make this person automatically agree to join you on your adventure. From here, there are a handful of other things. You can import all of your companions, and this only costs 100 choice points, which is rare. Usually, if you want to import a maximum of 8 companions into a jump, it costs 200 points as a way to make it a bit of a deal rather than costing 300 or 400 points. And there is a unique option here. This is a custom companion based off of Luigi, a sibling of yours who scales to you and always has the same powers and abilities you possess. They're skilled at teamwork with you, and you always know what each other's thinking. Here is the drawback section. Each of these offers 200 points unless otherwise stated. There's not a huge number of drawbacks here, but there's more than you might often see in some supermarket style jumps, which tend to be light on drawbacks, but in exchange usually make it so that each of the drawbacks offer 200 points rather than some sort of default number. What I do with my jumps is I tend to have drawbacks in tiers, where the simplest drawbacks offer 100 points, and then the worst drawbacks offer 600 points. So from here, you are able to see the ending option. This is a very simple ending section. It just allows you to stay here, which ends the chain, go home, which ends the chain, or move on to the next jump, which continues the chain. As I mentioned before, this part of the jump where you are here taking a look at stuff and purchasing things is a sort of build phase where you design your build. From here, you go into the active phase where your jumper is actually in the setting, interacting with characters and using their abilities and changing the setting that they're in ways that are goofy and correspond to their perks and personalities. And then once your decade or however long you are in the setting is over, you will be given the various ending options. A lot of different jumpers that I know of conceive of the world freezing and then you returning to your warehouse, and in your warehouse either your benefactor or some sort of other way of engaging with meta things is available for you to use. You get to select your next jump document, assuming you continue your chain. You get to select your next jump document, and from there you get to design your build, go into the world once again once your build is finished, and assuming you don't die or otherwise jump or chain fail, you get to go on to your next setting. So this is the actual cycle of more meta aspects of a jump chain. This is not meant to be anything super intense. This isn't meant to be anything super time consuming. While some jump documents will take you hours to look through and hours to design your build, many jump documents can be looked through in less than 45 minutes, and a build can be created in as few as 15. While it's easier for you to design a build once you have a more clear idea of your character, in the beginning there's all sorts of low power jumps that you can take where you are able to grab a whole bunch of different things and you're able to design more robust jumps for your characters and go through all of that kind of stuff. You're able to design more robust builds, for your characters that allow you to get more and more powers and eventually become greater and greater. I really like the idea of coming to Super Mario Maker series as an early jump because there is a lot of really powerful stuff here, all of which cost the same amount. And there's also lots of opportunities for you to collect different items and different gear and different abilities from different Nintendo characters, which can allow you to more bravely and more adventurously explore different settings, which in turn can allow you to overcome bigger and scarier drawbacks, so that way you don't just have to deal with the limits of having a 1,000 choice point budget, which sounds like a lot until you're in a meteor jump or a jump with more origins and more perks and more items, or even some unique jumps that have weird price schemes where in order for you to really get the stuff that you want, you actually really need to take on drawbacks. Over time, your jumper should become more brave and more willing to tackle drawbacks unless there is an in-character reason for a decision like that. I know that my characters, for a really long time, I hated drawbacks, and I would just do creative mode or my version of the questing mode system. But before I decided to start trying to make more balanced jumpers who embark on more careful journeys, by the time I started my YouTube chain, I had already overcome most of my aversion to drawbacks, but it definitely took me a while to get there. That said, if your jumper wants to have the most authentic experience, taking on drawbacks is probably necessary. And certainly if you want to have a jumper that is at least a little bit balanced, you probably want to tackle drawbacks rather than do some sort of alternative rule set like creative mode or the questing system, which are very fun if you really like the idea of having a powerful jumper, but certainly mess with the balance of your jumps a little. That said, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope that you all are having a wonderful day. I can't wait to hear from you, and I'm super excited to learn what you think of today's video.